Hey all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then you're welcome to my channel. In today's video, guys, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful Asooke dress with exaggerated hips and a snatched waist. Okay, so if you want to see how we make this piece, definitely keep on watching.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there.
When it comes to joining your Asooke pieces, you want to place them side by side, but make sure that they overlap with about quarter of an inch. Okay, not 1 inch, this is too much. Not half an inch, quarter of an inch. Okay, make sure that you're looking at the right side for both pieces. Normally when we are sewing, we sew the right side facing the right side of the other piece like this, and then we sew on the wrong side. But for this Asooke, you sew facing the right side of the piece. Make sure that you are facing the right side of the piece, and then just overlap it slightly, and then just sew a straight stitch at the edge of the piece on top. So keep doing that all the way to the end.
So I used less than one pack of Asooke to achieve this. So for the width of the Asooke, I simply joined 6 pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I joined 6 pieces to get the width that I want. And then for the length, I doubled the actual length that I want. So the length that I want this piece to be is 37 inches. So I multiplied that by 2, and that gave me 74 inches. So the length of this piece is 74 inches. So I simply cut 6 pieces of the Asooke that were all 74 inches long, and then I joined them side by side. Okay, the next thing I did now was to fold the piece like so. I folded it widthwise, and then after folding it widthwise, I went ahead to fold it lengthwise. Okay, so as you can see now, I've gone ahead to fold it lengthwise. So after folding it, I'm going to proceed to mark my vertical measurements. So from the top of the fold, I'm just marking the bust point of my client, which is 10 inches. So I marked the bust point, and then I marked the under bust 13 inches. The waistline, I marked it as well, 16 inches. The hip line, I marked it 24 inches, and then the length, as you can see, is 37 inches. Obviously, by the time I fold it, it's going to give me 36 inches, and that's actually what I want, 36 inches. So just add 1 inch to whatever you want as your final length. And then I extended all the lines, as you can see. Then the next thing I did was to go ahead and mark half of my shoulder measurements. My client's shoulder is 14 inches divided by 2, that gave me 7 inches, which is what I marked. And then the sleeve length is 12 inches. I'm not going to be hemming the sleeve because the edge of the Asooke is already woven nicely. So the length of my sleeve, as you can see, is 12 inches. Now for the neck width that I'm using, I'm marking 3 inches for the neck width, and that 3 inches will be the same for both the front neckline and the back neckline. So I just marked 3 inches. And then for the depth of the front neckline, I'm marking 4 inches. So I'm going to first of all mark a square neckline and then unfold it before marking that asymmetric neckline that you see that this style has. So just mark a square neckline first, which is 3 inches width and 4 inches depth. Then the depth for the back is 1.5 inches. I'm just drawing a curve to create the back neckline. So that's it for our neckline, as you can see. So now for my sleeve opening, as you can see, the sleeve is quite wide at the hem. So I'm going to use 12 inches for my sleeve opening. So I just marked 12 inches from the fold. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark all of my horizontal measurements. I'm starting with the waistline. I divided the waist circumference by 4, and then I marked that on the waistline, and then I added 1.5 inches allowance to that. Okay, now on the hip line, I'm going to do the same thing. I divided the hip circumference by 4, marked that on the hip line, and then I'm adding 1.5 inches allowance. Now I'm adding extra 1 inch allowance to the hip because remember, the hips are actually exaggerated. You can actually add more than 1 inch allowance if you prefer, but for me that extra 1 inch in addition to the normal 1.5 inches is fine. So I just draw a curve to connect the sleeve, the waist and the hips together. Now I'm going to measure what I marked at the hip line there, and I'm marking that same thing on the hem, okay, because from the hip it is straight down. Then I'm just going to connect both points together, and then after that I'll go ahead and cut out everything that I marked. Now after cutting the body of my piece, I'm going ahead to cut the back neckline for both pieces, okay. After cutting the back neckline, I'm just lifting up the piece so that I can cut just the front neckline. Don't make the mistake and cut the front neckline for both pieces, okay. Make sure that you cut the necklines for front and back separately. Then I've gone ahead now to mark the shoulder, okay, which is that fold, and then I'm just going to unfold it and then fold it in such a way that I can see my front piece directly, okay. So this is what it looks like once we're done. So now I'm going to go ahead and modify the neckline. Remember that the neckline is an asymmetric neckline. So from the shoulder there, I'm just marking 8 inches. That's how low the neckline will be. The part of the neckline that's going down, that's how low it's going to be. If you don't want yours to be that low, you can make yours 7 inches or even 6 inches. Bear in mind that when you make it 8 inches, your boobs will show a bit, okay. And that's what my clients wanted. That's why I made it like this. So I just connected that 8-inch mark to the rest of the neckline at the center, and then I also connected that 8-inch mark to the width of the neckline on the other side, and then I'm just cutting along those lines. So this is what the neckline looks like. Now it's time for us to mark the part where we are going to put in our loops. But before we do that, I'm just going to reduce the curve that we have by the sides, because since I'm going to be putting loops, I don't want that part to be too curvy. So I just marked the first point right where the sleeve ends, and then from the shoulder I'm just marking the waistline, okay. So the first point is where the sleeve stops, and then the second point is directly at that waistline. Now in between both points you want to mark 2 other points, okay, because we want to put 4 loops. So just go ahead and mark 2 other points. You can make them 1 inch apart or 0.75 inches apart. Whatever you have is fine. Just make sure that at the end of the day you have 4 points, because you're going to be attaching 4 loops. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to pipe my neckline. To do that, I'm using my bias tape. Now I'm sewing the bias tape to the right side of my neckline, and then after sewing it on the right side, I'll flip the bias tape to the wrong side and then sew it down so that the bias is nicely sewn to the wrong side of the piece, okay. So this is what it looks like once we're done. Can you see how neat everything looks? This is actually the wrong side that I'm looking at. So now it's time for us to create the piece for our loops. So this is my bias tape. I simply just folded it into 2, and then I'm just sewing it down. Now you want to make this as long as possible, because you're going to use this for both the loops and for the lacing. You can use ribbon or anything else, but I prefer to use a bias tape. You can also use a fabric as well. You can sew your fabric along the length and then turn it to the right side, but for me this works perfectly. I'm just making the bias tape very, very, very long, okay. It was about 60 inches or thereabouts when I was done sewing the bias tape. So once you have your desired length, just cut it out. Now for the length of each of the loops, I'm using 2.5 inches. So just measure your loop. Once you have 2.5 inches, cut it out, and then make sure you have 8 loops at the end of the day, okay. You want to have 8 pieces. So now these are the points where I'm going to be inserting the loops. So the first thing I did was I folded the loop into 2. Now I'm raising this up, and then I'm placing the loop right where I have that marking, okay. Right where I have that marking, I'm placing it, and then I'm closing it up. This is the wrong side of my piece, okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and tack the loop in place, okay. So when I get to the next point, I'll take my piece again, that's my loop, fold it into 2, raise it up, place it there, and then tack it in place. Okay, now make sure that the folded part of the loop is facing inward and the edge of the loop, the rough edge of the loop, is facing, the edge, that's the where you have your allowance. Basically, I hope you understand what I'm saying, guys. Just try to make sure that the folded part of the loop is facing inwards. So once you're done tacking all the loops in place, the next thing you want to do is just simply you know join the front and back pieces together with half-inch seam allowance. Half-inch seam allowance is all that you need. Okay, so I'm just going to join that from the sleeve all the way to the hem. Now, after joining it from the sleeve all the way to the hem, obviously I'll do the same exact thing for the other side. I'm also going to weave the allowance. Okay, so make sure you weave the allowance so that it's nice and neat. All right, and then hem your piece. And this is the finished look, guys. Let me know in the comment section if you prefer with or without the embroidery. I really love how this piece turned out. If you watched up to this point, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Don't forget that you can register for my online classes if you're interested. Simply leave a comment in the comment section down below. This is what the back of the piece looks like. As you can see, the lacing makes the waist snatched and looks very stylish at the back. Alternatively, you can actually just put belts to the sides and that would work as well. Okay, just to make the waist snatched. And this is what the packaging looks like. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.